Welcome all to the 2018 CPR International Mediation Competition. It is a pleasure to have you all here. We are having our final session today, represented by 3 teams. We have the finalists here. From one side, Harvard Law School, represented by Yuhi Gupta as the counsel and Jacob Omoridon as the client. And on the other side, we have the São Paulo Law School of Fundação Getúlio Vargas, FGV, represented by Bernardo Flecha de Lima Cunha as the counsel and Antônio Bloch Belisário as the client. Our winning mediator, who will mediate the session, is Deduta from National Law University from Delhi. We also have here our 3 judges that will be evaluating the session. Our presiding judge will be Fernanda Levy. Also as a co-judge will be Damia Cote, and lastly, Tom Valenti. I hope you all enjoy. Good luck, and see you later in the award ceremony.
Test. Is this working? Good.
Yeah.
Test.
This working? Yeah.
Yes. We're good.
Hello. Yes. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to today's session. This is our 5th session, and I know that in our first session, I congratulated you for choosing mediation as a process. And today, I must congratulate you for sticking to that choice. I have many clients who become disappointed when they can't reach a settlement in the first few sessions, but I think it's important to remember and recognize that these are problems and misunderstandings and disagreements which have arisen over several years, and it sometimes takes a little longer than 90 minutes to resolve them. So thank you for investing the kind of time and energy it takes to make mediation work, and for remaining patient and having faith in this process. Now, it's been 4 months since we last met, so let me refresh your memory. My name is Devdatta Xavier, and if that's too difficult for you to pronounce, you can just call me Dev. And maybe you could just also introduce yourselves, even though we're all very well versed with each other. You could please state your name and what capacity you're here in, and most importantly, whether you have the authority to settle on behalf of the companies that you're representing.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming. Now, my name is Antonio Magneto. I am the CEO of Rocky, and I have full authority to settle Dev. Please feel free to call me by my first name, Antonio.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for taking the time. My name is Bernardo Logan. I'm the external counsel for Rocky. Now, please feel free to call me by my first name as well.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacob Raven. I'm the CFO here at Fondue, and I do have the authority to enter a settlement today.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Juhi Creed. I'm the external counsel for Fondue, and I'm happy to go by Juhi. Nice to meet everyone.
Thank you. Just to double check with both sides, Antonio, you can enter into a settlement on behalf of the board of Rocky today itself, right?
Yes, Dev, that's right.
Yes, okay. And just to clarify with you as well, Jacob, you not only represent yourself, but also 40 other retro insurers. So can you also enter into a settlement on behalf of the retro insurers?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we've had 4 sessions before this, so I'm going to keep this short. I will just tell you what I'm expecting from you as parties and what you can expect from me as a mediator. So beginning with the role I will be playing. As you know, my job here today is to facilitate communication and to make sure that the parties are really listening to and understanding each other. I'm not a judge, I'm not an arbiter, so I will not be evaluating the legal merits of your case or telling you what the right solution is. And that's because as a mediator, I really value party autonomy. And I think it should be your own voluntary choice to enter into any kind of a settlement. Another thing that I really value as a mediator is confidentiality. So I can assure you that anything that you share during these joint sessions or the private sessions will remain completely confidential. It will not be disclosed to anyone in the outside world. Now, I understand that there has been a preparatory lawsuit filed in the Bellum courts. So I can also assure you that if this case were to go to trial, heaven forbid, I cannot be called as an expert witness to testify. So you can be rest assured on that. Now, coming to what I expect from you as parties. In my experience, this kind of high-stakes insurance litigation can be particularly challenging. And that's because insurance is a bit like a parachute. If it doesn't work when you need it, you're not going to need it again. So for a lot of policyholders, it's a matter of survival. And similarly, for a lot of insurance companies, paying out these kind of multi-million-dollar settlements can destabilize them financially. So I tell you that I understand the kind of stakes involved for both of you today. But in spite of that, it's important for you to be courteous, to be respectful, and to be polite to each other. Now, the only way we can be successful if both of you freely and openly share information with each other. In that sense, mediation is a lot like mining. You have to scratch beneath the surface and dig deeper to get to the most valuable resources. And the most valuable resource that both of you have is information. If you put information on this table, we can generate creative solutions. If you are open, honest, and flexible, then we can find a way to align your interests and needs. That's the best part about mediation, is that unlike litigation, it's not a zero-sum game, and the winner doesn't have to take it all. So I've already spoken too much, so without any further ado, I would now welcome you to maybe make your opening statements. We usually have the requesting party go first, so if Fondue would like to begin.
Sure, by all means. So thank you so much, Devin. We're really happy to be here. We are very much looking forward to this negotiation. So to begin, we want to acknowledge a very important elephant in the room. We want to name the issue as pertains to the PowerPoint and some of the developments on that end. So this was a roadshow interaction, so a lot of insurers were speaking to insurers. In the insurance community, things are all about objective numbers, so it was the numbers that matter. Given that forum, even if colorful language was used, the reason why it's used is because the colorful language does not matter, it's about the numbers. Now, that being said, we understand that your team has heard about some of the words that were used at this presentation. As someone who's outside the forum and not part of the community, we have heard that some of these words were found to be hurtful. We acknowledge that, and we acknowledge the fact that for people from a different world, different industry, that colorful language can be substantive. And we want to not only acknowledge that, but apologize for that. And we look to hear from you about how that has landed. And we do want to separate, with that being said, intent from impact. Please know that our intentions were just to, conduct business as we normally do. It was not meant to criticize or to, in any kind of outlandish way, express doubt in any moral way. That being said, we're exceptionally actually optimistic about this negotiation, because looking back, this is our 5th negotiation. We have conducted very fruitful talks. We've overcome odds that, let's face it, at the beginning seemed pretty insurmountable, and we're so close now. And why I'm also optimistic is that we also have some new leadership. Congratulations, Arturo, on being named CEO. We have heard about your spirit and your character, and we believe that will be key to kind of closing that gap and finishing this race. So we look forward to this negotiation.
I think just echoing what my client said, we're really serious and committed to seeing this through the end. We're mindful of keeping the parachute flying high. So we really want to see this through to the end. And in that vein, you may see us take notes, and it's just because we really want to make sure we address all of your concerns. And also, to the extent that what Jacob mentioned, we've had such fruitful discussions so far. And I think in each session, there's been new information that we've shared, and that's only made the discussion more productive and informed. So to that end, we would encourage all of us over here to share whatever information that we think would be relevant, especially it's been 4 months since we last met. So for example, in the letter we received from Rocky, you expressed concerns about some of the some of the terms of the negotiation being unacceptable, and you wanted some issues to be revisited. We are really keen to hear from you, and we really hope to have a very productive conversation today as well.
Once again, good afternoon, everyone. Now, Jacob, I thank you for the congratulations. Indeed, we are coming through a transition in Rocky. We've just been privatized as a company, and I was named CEO. I'm very excited for this new job, and because I have a mission, and that mission is to make this company profitable again. And the first step in this direction we have faced is solving this problem with Fondure and the other insurers. Now, I think that it's useful that we take a brief step back and remind ourselves that we're dealing with a situation that began all the way back in February 2017, when our conveyor belt and forklift collapsed. Since then, we've had a few meetings. Actually, I wasn't a part of these meetings since I just entered the company. And so far, no fruitful or no, I can say, agreement has been reached. So we are interested in getting results. During these months of coming back and forth and of privatizing, it came to our attention that, you mentioned this, Jacob, there was a roadshow in Europe about insurance. And in your PowerPoint presentation, there was a specific chart about risk quality. Now, it came to our attention as well that Rocky was the only company that was specifically mentioned in this PowerPoint chart, and that its risk quality was listed even below nuclear energy. And I do appreciate your intentions, Jacob, of doing business as usual. The impact this had on us wasn't just that colorful words hurt us. This conduct on Fondure's side causes actual damages to our reputation. And as a company that relies on insurance, our reputation also has a monetary value. So I do appreciate your apology, Jacob, and I hope that today we can walk towards a means of repairing this damage that was caused to our reputation. Now, I'm also aware that many of these issues have direct legal implications. That's why I came here with Bernardo, so that he can shed some light on these legal matters.
Of course, Antonio. Thank you, everyone, once again. Thank you, Dev. Your presence here is crucial, and we'll reach out to your assistance whenever is needed. Now, briefly, I would just like to highlight the two main legal implications that we think are important here today. First, we believe that all of our claims, as they have been presented, are due. Now, we have productive reports. We have showed in previous sessions how we saw that our claims are within the scope of the contract. Second, we also believe that since money does have a different value over time, these claims are entitled to monetary correction, because as of now, Rocky has yet to receive any formal payment. And lastly, well, as you put it, Jacob, it's the elephant in the room. Antonio mentioned this, and he was pretty precise when saying, these colorful words, as you say it, they have a direct reputational damage. And because of that, we also believe we are entitled to some form of reparation for these moral damages. And as you know, we have already filed a preparatory lawsuit in the Bellum courts. Now, although we are confident in our legal case, Antonio has instructed me not to dwell on legalities. I understand there are different venues for that. So perhaps, Juhi, we can step aside and let our clients focus rather on the commercial aspects of this dispute and try to work on a solution as of today. Now, on that note, would you like to add anything else, Antonio?
Yes, Bernardo, thank you. Now, in order to start our conversation today, Jacob, I think it's important that I say that because of this roadshow, trust was shaken. And this changes the way we see Fondure as a partner. Now, Dev, what we're looking for to accomplish in this mediation is First, to talk about our claims. We need to discuss options as to how they would be settled, and especially because it's been over a year, we're going through a transition and I have to show results. And secondly, we'd like to address how our company has been portrayed in the market, how our reputation has been damaged, and how we can overcome this issue. We'd also be interested in assessing if and how this relationship with Rocky as an insurer will continue in the future. That sums up our perspective, so I suggest that we get started, Dev.
Jacob, Juhi, do you think we should be following that progression of issues? Is that something you're okay with?
Yes, so thank you so much for your comments. You know, they really add color to our understanding of the matters and make it easier and more effective for us to do productive work. So we thank you for those words and acknowledge them. The three topics raised, so discussing the claim, reputation, and the future, are important topics that we also had in mind to discuss as well. We do think that it might be more helpful to discuss the reputation before the claim, as that might inform both the means and the ends reached in the discussion of the claim. So if you'd be amenable to discussing about the reputational topics in the air first, that would work for us quite well.
So, from my understanding, you're suggesting that we start with reputation. This fits also the agenda that we were thinking, since for us it's important that we address the trust issue before we move forward. Because if any result is to come from today, we have to at least be on the same page on this.
I mean, I completely agree with both parties because I think there has been, some degree of animosity that's been created because of this PPT roadshow. And I think it's very important for us to clear the air and to establish that both are here in good faith. So I'm just going to put down the agenda and then we can get talking. Sorry if you can't read that. That's broadly what we'll be discussing. So, Jacob, would you like to maybe start by offering an explanation or a clarification about why were such words used with respect to Rocky and maybe assuage their fears?
Yeah.
Also, I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt. I'm a little confused as to what words you're referring to. Dev, maybe I'm the only one. Maybe you could shed some light on this as well.
So as I understand it, as was clarified, the issue was, sorry, I've been avoiding the mic, the use of the word Rocky risk, and then putting that under nuclear risk seemed to have been the issue. And we're, in the spirit of transparency, we're definitely open to discussing that, of course. And as we mentioned earlier, the reason why we had used Rocky's name in particular was that you were the current firm that we were discussing, so it just happens to be the most recent and ongoing matter. As we mentioned earlier, in that negotiation, or in that forum, it was really about the numbers, not about the words or the color or the adjectives, and we apologize for the impact that might have been made. But in terms of moving forward, we have some proposals for how we can move forward on this, but first we wanted to ask, what does reparation on this front, outside of litigation, look like to you?
Now, Jacob, as I mentioned, the matter here is that reputation is closely linked to how expensive premiums get for us. Because as you very well know in insurance, most of the premiums are based on reputation, on trust, and on risk management. Since we were unfairly portrayed, in our view, by your report, we believe that this will result in financial losses for our company. So, to answer your question directly, the means of reparation would look at least in two stages. First, monetary compensation. Secondly, some form of a public statement or conveying this to the public in the light that we believe is fair, in the light that Rocky is diligent in managing its risks. Rocky has come through a recent process of transition to a private company and has every intention of becoming highly profitable. Does this answer your question?
Yes, if and I can just add on that, we appreciate your apology. We recognize that. We also believe that considering Rocky's reputation, we have to leave today with assurances that this won't be an issue in the future. Even more so if we are to talk openly and have this conversation, having this reassurance, I think would make our conversation flow better.
Now, maybe you'd like a moment to react to this, and we'd also be interested in hearing what proposals you had in mind.
So I think I'll leave the proposals bit to Jacob because he'll be more familiar with the substance. But after hearing what you are saying, I think we totally understand the importance of leaving the room today feeling reassured that this is not going to happen again. And from, if we heard you correctly, what you are looking for, or at least what reparation and what fairness would look like to you, is one aspect is some monetary compensation, and a second aspect is some sort of public statement to sort of assuage the public's image of Rocky. Have I understood you correctly when I say that?
Yes, Juhi.
Okay. In terms of proposals, I think, Jacob, you want to maybe lead that discussion?
Yes. So thank you for clarifying this. In terms of the numbers, I agree fully that reputation has monetary implications and the two cannot be extricated from each other. I do think that in terms of how we can get creative about reparation might come up in the claim section. Maybe we can couch that as well. Obviously, this is a full package, so we can like tentatively, have placeholders or things that we agree with tentatively moving towards the whole package. How I see us moving forward with the other side of this, reputation. I think a public statement would be good. We'd be open to that, saying that we value our relationship. This has been a 7-year relationship, and it will continue to be a strong relationship. That circumstances arose where this relationship, so there is us and there is the problem. This problem arose, and we are doing our best to deal with that problem. Your war plan used the best capacity and knowledge that you had at the time to meet that problem, and we're willing to say this in a public statement. We think that would help to address some of the the reputational risks that you mentioned for the international community. And we think that in this public statement as well, how you can help us a bit is that obviously Bellum has been perhaps a bit shaken about the terminology that we've used. So as we target the international audience and international community, if you could target maybe Bellum's community and Bellum's audience, that would be in our interest too, because obviously the reputation could benefit both of us. And we also think that in terms of how monetary reparations work, the reason why I want to integrate it into perhaps the agreement moving forward and not explicitly have direct monetary reparations is that the perception of an adversarial relationship, okay, they're paying in compensation of a harm done, that will raise questions of what is this relationship like? That will spook other reinsurers potentially. If you remember back at the beginning, because of our interest in development, we actually broke with other insurance companies by entering this developing context. So we see it as in both of our interests to minimize any perception of an adversarial relationship. So we want to kind of include any kind of monetary acknowledgement, reparation, in the wider agreement. I kind of keep that in mind as we form those numbers, but not have an explicit monetary reparation, as that might worry the community internationally.
What I'm hearing, Jacob, is that your proposal is basically comprised of two main areas. First, the public statement. As I mentioned before, this would be a viable solution, in our opinion, both to repair our reputation to some extent, and also as a means of guarantee that such behavior wouldn't happen again. And as for the content of the statement you suggested, if I understood you correctly, you would say you value our relationship, and this would be conveyed to the international public as well as Bellamar public, and this would also suit your interest of advertising your company in our market. And as for the second part of the proposal, it's of a monetary nature, and you believe it would be a good idea to include it in the claims so as to not raise a perception or raise eyebrows that this would create an adversarial position between us. I do find that suggestion interesting, Jacob, because we do not have any intention of being portrayed as an enemy of fondue, though I'd like to understand better how this suits your interests. Maybe there is an interest of yours of being portrayed as a partner of Rocky. I don't want to assume, so would you clarify this, please?
Of course, we are very interested in being portrayed as a partner of Rocky. We believe in your viability as a company. As you mentioned, you value profitability. We value profitability as well. You know, this is a partnership. So although there are many words, grievances that have been exchanged, if we kind of take a third-person bird's-eye view, so the view from the balcony, so to speak, we want to look at what can serve the overarching relationship here. What helps us is if we have a relationship, we have a new market for which to insure. You have a viable insurer. You know, going back to 2009, you didn't have, it was self-insurance. 2010, it was self-insurance plus second-rate insurance, suboptimal. And we have this adamantia resource that is going to change the market, double the profits of iron ore. We want to be involved in that. You want to be involved in that. And keeping this relationship going in a non-adversarial manner is an incredible boon for us and you. So what I'm trying to say is our interest in this is your interest. Maintaining this relationship, maintaining the profitability and viability of both parties.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm understanding this correctly, I think what Jacob is trying to say is that when you pay out a certain sum of money under the head of moral damages, that also has a certain kind of moral weight. And it could lead to a lot of negative publicity, which could show that things weren't really on good terms between Fondue and Rocky. I think Juhi had something to add.
Yeah, I think just in a similar vein, I mean, one is looking from the balcony, both for our interests like Fondue and Rocky's. Also, I think just in terms of a larger public interest, because I think both Rocky and Fondue, we are sort of market leaders in our respective fields. I think we set an example for the market. The market looks to us for confidence. So if we give something as moral damages, I think the negative repercussions on the market should be factored as well. Whereas I think if it's something which we can accommodate in the claim, it attracts lesser attention, but at the same time, we have hopefully assuaged your concerns. So I think just taking a market view as well is important because I think both of us are leaders and we are sensitive to the market as well.
So what I've been listening is that moral damage as a label is something that would offset also the reputation of the relationship itself. So perhaps if moral damage as a label is a problem, as you have been suggesting, we can always find a new name for what happened for this. We can control the outcome since we are in mediation and how the public perceives what happened. And then we can address these values in another package. As Antonio had spoken to me, this would be interesting.
Exactly, Bernardo. And I think that your original suggestion of including this in the claims is interesting for sure, though they are, of course, related to us being able to settle the claims. So before getting to that subject right now, Dev, I think I would just add that for us, it would be important that such a public statement, in principle, would contain the expressions risk quality and trust, because this is the way in which our reputation was harmed by that original PowerPoint chart. So I think addressing it directly would be fundamental, aside from valuing our relationship and being conveyed to the international public, which you suggested, Jacob.
Yeah, so.
Yes, and just so I don't lose the train of thought here, something that we have also been discussing that it would be interesting from what you're saying, Jacob, is that it seems we share some common goals. Antonio has expressed his interest in the relationship itself, and you seem to have shared that interest as well, as the new metal of dementia and the profits that will arise and how it would change the market. Now, of course, in order to have these new profits and change the market, we have to account for the losses that we currently have. It's hard to operate if you don't face the losses as they come. We have to be prepared before we can think of innovating, of moving forward. And I think that's important we keep in mind, as this seems to suit both of our interests, as well as something that could help us going forward, and Antonio talked to me about this, is if this public statement would also have a written version. Since this written version would be useful not only for clients, for other reputation that we need, and would help our relationship as well, because it would certainly benefit in the operation of Rocky.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, definitely both a visual, some element of public statement, and there will be a written component. We also want it to be joint. Just to anchor a process a bit, I think that, as you mentioned, addressing loss in the numbers is important, so I'm going to try and outline what we've done, what we've been saying. So basically, before I do that, you mentioned that you want us to include the words risk and trust, risk quality, and trust. While I will say that we are very interested in moving forward, we're very interested in having a strong relationship, we would be remiss if we kind of presented ourselves as being able to, for example, misconstrue any objective numerical facts. So what I mean by this is that what we can say, for example, is that we expect the risk quality to improve, that we trust our relationship going forward, but given that our industry is based on actuarial science and mathematical outcomes, if the numerical outcome says that there was high risk objectively, it could be proven, for example, if say the numbers weren't healthy at one point, that if we said that there was no risk and there was mathematically risk, that would mean that we were lying and we'd be doing our job improperly. So we're able to use that language, but in a sense of trajectories. So we can say that we honestly expect that our relationship is healthy and that we trust that relationship, and because of that, we expect the risk quality numbers to improve, which is all true. We just wanted to clarify, to kind of manage expectations here, that we're not going to say that the past wasn't the past. We can't change that, but we do kind of look forward to the future. So far, we have the joint public statement with a written component, and we're going to address the monetary component not as a monetary reparation, but as an item to keep in mind as we get the numerical settlement within the claims.
Right, Jacob.
If I've understood it correctly.
Yes, I think in principle we can agree to that.
Okay.
Of course, this has to be further explored during the conversation about the claims, though your suggestion of portraying the risk quality of Rocky as a matter of trajectory, I still insist that it's important we use language such as risk continues to improve rather than to improve the risk in the future. What I mean is we can let the details to be ironed out later. I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same statement, and it's important that Rocky is portrayed as not a company that is becoming reliable, but has been managing its risks in a diligent way, which is the way we see ourselves.
And perhaps just to add on that, in our view, Rocky has always been diligent. Mm-hmm. For example, take Adamantia. We had, before Adamantia, an operation that had 5,000 tons per hour peak. During Adamantia, we put a caps of 3,500 tons per hour, and we were operating at an average of 2,500 tons per hour. So we were working with conservative values because, well, risk management is important for us. Insurance policies and receiving indemnities is not ideal. Ideal is not to have damage. This is always reparation. So I assure you, having to pay an indemnity claim is not good for both of the parties. It's just what we have to do when the time comes. So perhaps if risk management and how you convey this message to the public is a problem, you could explain to us and further elaborate what would you need to convey this to the public in this way? Do you need any information, report? What would that entail?
Sorry. I mean, just on that point, also in this, I think this links to something in the spirit of going forward. One is that I think any language, any specific language is obviously something we can discuss subsequently. And I think this ties in with the point of information sharing, which is also part of the relationship going forward. Whether it's in terms of us exchanging information more periodically, whether it's in terms of fondue sort of having some inspections. Overall, I think that just doesn't link to the point of the public statement, but I think it's just a good foundation point for a healthy relationship going forward. Although I'm mindful of the fact that maybe in terms of the agenda we set that we should probably discuss the claim now, but that is something that has been on our mind, that we would want to discuss information sharing, because I think it has an overall impact on building goodwill, which is a mutual interest for both of us.
If I could just maybe intervene at this point, I think ever since there's been a change in the management of Rocky as well, it's possible that new risk management systems have been put in place, especially after you've had something like the Beltway collapse. There may have been changes made. So if they could share the most recent up-to-date data with you, and you could then objectively have it evaluated by your actuaries, and if it proved that quantitatively the risk was improving, maybe we could then figure out what would be the exact phrasing of the statement.
Exactly. So what we were going to propose is that it seems that the last hurdle to our tentative agreement on reparations is this terminology of the apology. How about a contingency agreement where, on the one hand, we will definitely say that we trust the relationship and its trajectories, but then, and we will say that, so we have two options. Either we expect the numbers to rise, or we expect the quality to continue to rise. You guys want to continue to rise, we expect it to rise in the future. If we can verify with third-party risk analysts that the numbers are the numbers would indicate that the risk quality is increasing, then we will incorporate that into our statement. If the actuarial numbers come out that we cannot say that, as a matter of ethical law, then we won't say that. But either way, we will make the normative statement that we expect the quality to arise and that we trust you. So can we have that kind of contingent agreement moving forward?
Jacob, I do understand your position. As a reinsurance company, you have to rely on the numbers. And I do think that conducting a new report will show that the numbers are good. We have been implementing the dementia operation for over a year now, and we are confident that it is of a risk management of good quality. And I do think we could keep this in mind, a third-party risk analysis. I do like your contingency plan because it does address our interest. Now, as to what you mentioned earlier, Juhi, I think that focusing on exchange of information right now wouldn't make so much sense. I think we could talk about this if we get to a subject about the future relationship, because I think we have sufficiently explored the subject of reputation for now. We could focus on how it would be financially dealt with in a discussion right now about the claims. How does that sound?
So I think that's what we had in mind, actually, to move on with the agenda, discuss the claim, and then when we come to the future relationship, keep information sharing as a talking point, but we are more than happy to proceed with discussing the claim now.
I think that's a very good idea, considering that we have about 15 minutes left. From what I understand, ever since there's been a change in management at Rocky, you do wish to sort of revisit some of the issues that we had earlier come to some kind of a tentative agreement on. So could you flag your specific concerns with the claims? And then we could discuss them in a structured manner.
Dev, our concerns with the claims are that, in our view, they are due to its full extent of $350 million. These are losses we have faced for many months, and we have yet not received any part of this indemnity. Now, we have negotiated this for a few sessions now and haven't yet reached a settlement, which is why we are open to be flexible with these claims. Though in order to be flexible, we will need good reasons in order to justify this to the board and to be fair with my company.
Also, perhaps something that will be helpful in this area so that we understand the missing pieces of this puzzle is what on your side are your financial restraints, and if you have a process to approve a certain amount of money and how that works.
Yes. So in the spirit of mining for that information that will move this conversation forward, we're very happy to disclose the kind of numbers that we're dealing with. We're happy that you've expressed an element of that you're looking forward to being flexible if we can give reason for it. That's because, as I mentioned, we have an interest in a settlement going forward. In this negotiation, like any negotiation, there's a ZOPA, so to speak, a zone of possible agreement based on our numbers. Our numbers have a cap around 160 million. This is because in compensating this claim, it is not just us. It is the 40 companies. There's PubRay, T-Ray, CrownRay, the whole team, so to speak. And that is about the number that we're dealing with. On the margins, we can change a bit. But I guess the main takeaway from that number, showing our reservation value, kind of our limits on that ZOPA, is that our numbers are pretty disparate if we are not flexible. So we hope that we can reach a solution that keeps that in mind.
Jacob, you're saying that you're interested in settling this dispute. I am glad to hear that. And you've also mentioned that you would have a reservation value a little over $160 million. And this is because you're not alone in this. You have to deal with the other retro insurers. Now, we in Rocky have made evaluations and have come to the conclusion that we would be able to settle at $200 million. And this is provided that our interests are also attended. And by that I mean that a settlement today would mean receiving the money in a reasonable amount of time. And this also means that if we reach an agreement as to how our reputation will be repaired and how the harm that has been caused will be remedied. I don't want to assume this won't happen again, which is why we were insisting on assurance for the future. So for us to be able to go down to $200 million, these interests would have to be attended. Now, Bernardo had asked a question regarding your constraints, and you mentioned that it's related to the retro insurers. Maybe you could expand a little more on that.
For sure. So basically, because of how we have broken the claim, insurance and reinsurance, there are, as a matter of percentage, other insurance companies that are responsible for certain elements of the claim. So while we can speak to our chunk of that claim that we would compensate, there are 40 other companies mainly that have responsibility for other aspects of that claim. Over the course of the last 4 negotiations, we have not only negotiated with you, but it's an ongoing negotiation with our team, the other insurers, and through some active negotiation with them, this number has gone up progressively, and 160 million is the result of those efforts that at some point seemed prohibitive, but we've managed to get there. So, looking at what seems to be a $40 million gap between where you are and where we are, I'm happy to reintroduce the fact that Arturo aptly made that non-monetary factors have monetary value. So perhaps we can bridge that gap by creating value in non-monetary ways that we could foresee having a monetary impact in the future.
And I agree with Jacob on that. And so just so that we make sure that we understood what Antonio said, in terms of your interests, what you're looking at, you want to receive the money in reasonable time. And of course, we understand the importance, the essence of time. Secondly, ways in which the reputation can be repaired. Thirdly, you mentioned how the harm that you've suffered can be remedied. And fourth, we're looking at safeguards in the future to make sure that the problem doesn't occur. So if we're on agreement on that, then maybe what Jacob mentioned, if it's something that's open to you, identifying ways in which we can create value which are non-monetary, which would be sort of equivalent to this 40 million bridge. Because I do feel that starting from the first negotiation to where we've come today, 40 million is like, if the gap is, it seems very narrow from where we started off. And it would be, in the spirit of moving forward, I think exploring non-monetary options would make sense.
So if I understand you correctly, you're proposing that we try to open our minds to see any non-monetary value that we have that has direct reflexes on monetary value. And this way we would bridge the 40 million gap between us. I think that's interesting, and we certainly have some ideas down the pipeline. I know Antonio has put in hours working for this. Now, something, just so we can clarify this, Dev, because I couldn't pick this up very clearly. You mentioned that the 160 million is through negotiations with the other retro insurers. So I'm assuming that this value only refers to the amount of the losses in the policy and not the 10 million that we were talking about in moral damages. So 160 million refers to the policy itself, and this you would recover from the retro insurers. Now, the 10 million itself, what is your view and your position regarding this as well? This would be good for us to understand so we can think more creatively.
So thank you for expressing that. Let me clarify. So putatively, tentatively, that 160 million is the sum of our assembly of parties, including us, in how much we'd be able to compensate on this claim. Now, we've exchanged in good faith, and what I see has been very productive and building trust. So on the margins, maybe we can work with that if we can pull some numbers and pull some strings again on the margins. But that 160 is kind of our settlement number to anchor that. Of course, we are one of the retro insurer, we're one of the insurers. So on our elements of the claim, perhaps we can find ways to pull strings, account creatively. But really, when it comes down to it, the major prospect we see for creating value, and that we will explore this, but these non-monetary means could very well have strong monetary impacts. We see the solution there. That's where we locate the prospects for this negotiation. So there are marginal possibilities on the numbers strictly, but we would encourage optimism in looking at those non-monetary factors.
So I think just to make sure that we've communicated what we're saying effectively is that whenever we discuss numbers, it would include what we would label as moral damages. So whether we're talking $160 million from our side, we would not separately pay something for the moral damages. That includes the moral damages amount. As Jacob mentioned, maybe there's a slight possibility for like marginal increases, but I think we would want to proceed with the assumption that we're looking at a figure of around $160 million and bridging any gap with non-monetary options.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that this 160 million would entail a remedial reputation measure that we were discussing previously, and that you might be able to pull some strings. I'd be interested in knowing which strings you would need to pull and maybe how we could help in this for marginal increases you were mentioning. Though for now, if that's okay with you, Bernardo, and I would like to take a brief break.
Certainly.
And align before we come back.
Would you mind if I talk to them during your break outside?
Of course, Dev,
Certainly.
go ahead.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
We have sort of
We're
we
very
were
much...
discussing that how we would want a private session with you now.
Perfect
so
timing.
It worked out well.
Any idea of time?
It's 5:23 now, so we have 37 minutes more.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Just gonna wait. Yes. So talk to me.
Gladly. Okay, so thank you so much for your work thus far. Actually, although it seems that, given the last 4 months, we thought that this would be explosive. It seems to have not been as explosive as we expected it to be. So we said we're feeling good, and we are feeling good. But I want to check in with you from your perspective as the mediator. are we interacting in a way that's in the vision for what you saw as how this negotiation will ideally be? Should we be changing anything? Are you satisfied with us?
I'm actually quite happy with the way this negotiation is proceeding because I think you've addressed the elephant in the room, which was the PowerPoint presentation and the roadshow, which was slightly in bad taste. But I think now we're a little bit stuck on the present claim because both parties are talking about non-monetary ways of compensating, but no one's putting down any sort of concrete suggestions. So, I mean, from their side, for instance, I think when they talked about moral damages for reputation loss, I think something they were really concerned about is the fact that they will now have to pay higher premiums because they're being portrayed as, this risky company that doesn't take adequate safeguard measures. And because you are a leading figure in the insurance industry, maybe you could help them with that. Maybe help them secure favorable contracts. So when you're talking about non-monetary compensation, I think you should really pick up on what their underlying interests are and see ways in which you can help them. Sorry, I thought they were coming back.
No, I think so. Jacob and I have definitely discussed some non-monetary options. We actually, and probably we would have proceeded to that next. I think we wanted to understand what the impact of the roadshow has been on them. I think that was important for us to know where not just in terms of monetarily, but also in terms of the relationship. Because I feel that has a bearing on what sort of options we should be suggesting. We want to continue the relationship. And also just to understand, in terms of the claim, where do they stand? So it was very helpful to know that they are flexible with going down from $350 million. And so now we know if the gap we're working with is $40 million. So this information sharing has been useful, and I'm quite confident it will inform our sort of the options we are able to generate.
If I may just make a suggestion, I mean, you've been talking about how you can marginally maybe increase the figure. And I mean, I don't know what is the extent of the scope of your authority, but if it's possible, it may help to give them a more concrete number. Maybe that might help.
So we think we have an idea in this front. We're very happy, and we actually noted, and I'm happy that you repeated, that they have linked their view of ways to move forward with the kind of reputational, moral hurt, with making some movement on premiums. In full disclosure in this added layer of confidentiality, we do want to pull the strings in terms of our personal fondue kind of purse. We can pull some strings a bit. Maybe with premiums, we can discount the premium going forward for a certain element of time that would send a very strong message to the community. So, for example, maybe discounting, and again, it's more of a symbolic than monetary thing, but there can be a monetary valuation. That was what we meant by marginal. So whether it's discounting that 20 million to 19 million over 5 years, to give a 5 million, if they push harder, it's riskier for a very risk-averse industry and company, but maybe we try to extend that time span to meet their 10 if they don't budge, to make that 10 years at a 1 million discount, which would both serve the purpose of addressing premium, valuing it if they insist on that valuation, and having symbolic non-monetary importance moving forward. So that's kind of a strategy that we were looking at.
And I think we also want to brainstorm some other options, but I think in the interest of time, that's something we want to should discuss directly with the parties. But this is an example of one of the strategies.
But I do think this would be maybe an appropriate direction to take in this session. Because I think the sooner you put down solutions, the better it is. Because otherwise we're just talking in abstract terms and no one really knows what's happening.
So exactly. So just to, in terms of like giving you some clarity, although there's this added layer of confidentiality, and we would want to introduce numbers first, please feel free to say that we had a discussion about linking reparation for that harm with our calculus on the premium. We'd be happy to, it's okay if you introduce that as the topic. Thank you.
And I'll wait for you to put down the numbers.
Yes.
I also think it's just more effective if Jacob and Antonio directly
Definitely. I mean, I think you guys have been doing a fantastic job communicating, and I've had to intervene very little. So.
But I think, Jacob, was anything more you want to share now, or are we good to?
Is there anything else that you think is sensitive that I should know going further in this round?
Yeah, so if there is an impasse on these non-monetary valuations, I want to get your opinion on. So basically, what I would do at that point, what we discussed that would be a way to go forward is kind of getting a breakdown of the numbers as they see them right now, like at this lower value of 200 million. If that 40 million is unbridgeable, seeing that breakdown, seeing ways that we can maybe lower some of those values, whether it's
As in be like financially creative?
yeah, so when it comes to like the contractual penalties, when it comes to business interruption losses, how they conceive that at 200 million, maybe
Yeah.
we can be creative about that. But that's if we can't bridge it just like easily on the non-monetary value. So we do have monetary discussions, keep in mind,
Yeah.
but we wanted to try the non-monetary first.
Okay, I think that's a good idea. I'm just wondering if they're waiting for me to call them back.
I mean,
Maybe
were you envisaging having a private session with them as well?
only
Or-
if they want it. So maybe I should just go
Sure.
and
Sure.
check on them because it's possible that they're just waiting for me to call them.
No problem. Yeah. Oh, yeah, this is true. Oh, yeah. No, it was good pop.
Well, thank you for waiting on us. We were under the impression that you were having a private caucus and we didn't
Yeah.
want to intrude.
So on that note, we
Yes.
would actually like to have a private conversation with you, Dev.
By all means.
Yes. We like dividing her attention. It's great media.
Well, you have my undivided attention now.
Thank you very much, Dev. Now, the reason why I called for this caucus is because I am under pressure, internal pressure from our company. And I have a board to answer to. And my instructions are that I cannot go under $182 million.
Okay.
That is our final reservation value. Because my reputation is on the line here. As Antonio Magneto, CEO of Rocky, I have to stand ground. And if we don't reach a settlement today, then we will proceed with judicial litigation. And I want to ask for your help, Dev, that we do a reality check with Jacob and Juhi, that they understand that if we don't reach an agreement today, then our route is going to be the courts. Now, so far we have agreed in principle to means of repairing our reputation that was harmed by a written statement, by using proper language in such a statement, provided that we conduct a report. What is keeping us from bridging this gap, in our view, is that 160 million do not seem like a reasonable number for us. And that's because we are facing 350 million of factual losses in our company. And we have been partially appeased by those exercises and agreements we reached, though we would have, as well as conveying this information to them that we need to find a settlement we can agree on,
Yeah.
is that we explore in more detail the other means of payments we could find.
Okay.
So we were thinking of discounts and premiums because they have showed an interest in maintaining this relationship, and so have we.
Yeah.
And the 160 million are a group decision with the retro insurers. Maybe we could see what Fondue could do as to helping us bridge this gap.
Yes.
Now, is there anything you'd like to add, Bernardo?
Yes, Dev, I just want to point out that this is a final decision from the board. It is not us on the table deciding this. We do want to help Fondue also get in more into detail with the Bella market. It seems they have an interest in being there and helping us and helping at Amantia. So we are looking to do this. Now the board, well, they are tough. They are hands-on. And if there's no alternative, that's what we'll be looking at. And it's far from what we here think is possible today.
So, based on the 2 private sessions that I've had with both parties, I can assure you that your interests are very aligned and both of you are thinking along the same lines. Because you have absolutely no flexibility on this $182 million figure, I would suggest you tell them that. Because there's really no bluffing happening here. You cannot go below this figure. So just tell them that. And maybe they can figure out a way to sort of make up for that 22 million gap through, as you mentioned, discounts on future premiums, etc. So
Yes, I think that's a great idea, Dev. Antonio can present this to them. I think it's good when they come back before moving forward.
Yeah.
We're talking a lot about possible offers, possible ideas, and we seem to have agreed in some areas already. So perhaps if we get that on the board as to know what we already have agreed to perform and then explore what else is left.
definitely. So I'm just going to quickly call them back and I'll put everything on the
Dev,
board after that.
Before doing that, I'd just like to make sure it's clear that we have the authority to settle below 182 million, though we would need strong justifications and even quantifiable justifications. So maybe
Okay.
if we can explore a form of discount and this can offset this bridge, then we would be open to
Okay.
exploring this possibility at least.
Perfect. I'm just going to call them back in. You could just, yeah, it's a long journey to make. Yes. So I'm happy to inform both parties that you're thinking along very similar lines and you want very similar things. So what Jacob and Juhi informed me during their private caucus is that they're also looking at providing you maybe some kind of discounts on future premiums because this will help set off some of those concerns you had about, monetary losses because of reputational damage. And that's something that even Antonio and Bernardo are willing to explore. But before that, they want to tell you about some limitations that they have with respect to how much they can negotiate on the figure.
Right, Dev. Jacob, Juhi, we have made assessments within Rocky and we came to the conclusion that we would be able to settle for an amount that would go as low as $182 million. And this encompasses the reputational reparation as well as the, Bernardo, help me, the word slipped me, the delay payments.
Exactly. Since there was the fact that no money until now has been cashed out from Fondure to Rocky, and money does have a different value over time, this would also encompass, in our view, and as a sign of goodwill, the correctional values. Now, it's important to note that this value of 182 million is also important for Antonio to preserve his personal reputation within the company. They have expectations of what he has come here to do, and that has to be met as well.
Okay.
And before you get a chance to react, there is one more thing we have to make sure you're aware of, is that if we don't reach a settlement, we are prepared to go to court. Now, I have understood that is not within your interests. It's not within ours either, though receiving what we understand to be fair is fundamental for us, and we would be prepared to follow that route.
I think so. So Jacob has some sort of proposals we want to discuss. Also, if we heard you correctly, I think so. Avoiding litigation does seem to be a common interest. Fairness as well. I think we both want to leave the room today feeling we've been fairly treated. And also, in terms of the specifics you mentioned, I think you said that you can go. You've had some internal discussions, and you can go down to $182 million, which would include the reputation reparation, so to speak. And also, of course, we acknowledge Antonio's interest and Rocky's interest to feel that they've not been taken advantage of in any way. I think this is something Jacob has in mind too, on behalf of Fondue, and I think Jacob, now maybe it's a good chance to sort of discuss some proposals we have in mind.
Yes. Thank you so much, Juhi. And thank you guys a lot. We've made some incredible meeting in the middle in this negotiation. We have a little bit to go, but I think that you're doing a great job. I wanted to to express that, so the gap that we have now, 22 million is what the gap is at the moment. As was mentioned by Dev, we want to pull some strings to broach that number through premiums. Now, in private caucus, we discussed maybe kind of giving a more moderate number and then expanding to the frontiers of what we can do, and kind of doing that as a process tactic. But with so little time gone and with so much confidence in you guys, we're just going to say that over 10 years, we want to lower the premium. We think that symbolically, this carries more value symbolically. How the international market sees not just Rocky, but the country is important. So we can lower the premium from 20 to 19 million over the next 10 years for $10 million across this period, which is what you guys had originally asked for in terms of that acknowledging the emotional harm from the early negotiations. So of course we wouldn't name it as such, but that should hopefully address that. It'll get us to 170, and the impact in future iterations will presumably outweigh that 10 million. So we hope that helps. And then looking at that 12 million that is still standing. A lot of it has to do with a new CEO very understandably needing to show that, they mean business, they want a strong settlement, and as you mentioned, profitability, longevity and viability of your company is important. So how we wanted to bridge that gap in a non-monetary way that we think it will have incredible monetary value, acknowledging the fact that we are at the barrier of what we can do monetarily at that 170 total. We propose scheduling a negotiation for a very, very potentially lucrative agreement. As you mentioned, adamantium has changed the market. At the moment, the insurance companies internationally cover Stingray complex. You're a big company that extracts ore as well before production and export. We only come in on the production and export part. So we assume that when it comes to mining from the source, that aspect is either still in self-insurance or in second-tier reinsurance. What we want to have explicit negotiations in the future for, and schedule that, is to expand our insurance presence in your mining interests, directly at from the source, extraction. Not only will this have great value in itself, improve your bottom line, but it will show to the world that we're diving in. We are all in with this company, and that will be an indication of how much faith we have going forward. So I hope that this might be amenable as a proposal.
So a lot has been said. Just to see if I understood you clearly, you mentioned the possibility of discounts in the future premiums. It would be precisely from 10 years, $19 million per year, $1 million down per year for premiums. And also you mentioned the possibility of expanding your participation in insuring other parts of Rocky's activities, such as the extraction of minerals. Now, I think it's important, something that, well, at least I have been thinking, is that if we produce together, going back to the report that we had agreed upon, using good words for Rocky's risks, this would also be beneficial for Fondue Ray's reputation. Because if you're thinking of expanding what you're covering in our operations, on your side, from what I understand, it would be not good for the reputation if other insurance companies believe that you are taking on more risk than what is normal. So perhaps how we control what is viewed from the risks inside our operation would also benefit both parties. Now, I'm sure Antonio also would like to react to some of the offers that have been made.
Of course, Bernardo, thank you. Now, as to what you just mentioned, we do understand that such a public statement and future partnership might have positive impacts, probably on Fondue's side within the Belém market, which is expanding. And we'd be interested in seeing how you would maybe include this within your proposal. Now, I'd like to tell you a little bit of what I like and don't like about this proposal. First, regarding the discount. I just want to make sure I understand. Fondue Ray holds 10% of the risk of the policy. That means that in paying 160 million, you would be paying $16 million, and in the discount for the premium, from 20 to 19, this would mean $1 million of discount. $1 million divided by 10%, this would mean $100,000 per year.
Let me clarify. So our share of the 160 is our term with the insurance market. But when I say that we are pushing the frontiers of what is financially possible, this 10 million is out of Fondue's purse. This is us putting ourselves on the line, essentially making our cut of the claim from 16 to 26 million as a way of showing our seriousness of making agreements in this negotiation.
All right, so what I like about this is that this does attend our interest of having insurance for the stingray complex and also more reasonable premiums. Now, we're still not into that value of 182 million we came here thinking of, though maybe this might be bridged by this second aspect of your proposal, which is of expanding the coverage to the mining operations as well. Now, I do think that this would be interesting. I'd like to ask you if you have any more information or concrete numbers as to what this would look like. For now, what I can say is if our partnership is expanded, maybe it would be interesting to include this in the public statement as well, in order to show the public that not only does Fondue value this relationship, it also would like to expand it. And I think this would also be interesting for you in the view of the Belém Republic market. Now, maybe you'd like a moment to react to that.
Yes, I see to clarify again, because there's an important misunderstanding here. Of course, it's taken 5 rounds of negotiation to reach the substance on this agreement. So reaching the substance on expanding potentially doubly into the mining element is not something that would be practicable for us to do today. But I know that there are, for example, transaction costs in even getting the negotiations, getting the planning down to have that topic of entering a new field. We propose negotiations of this topic. We see that as having value. It is a non-monetary proposal, having negotiations on this expansion. But if you look at the status quo, without this on the table, this is an amazing prospect. You know, like you guys are, as we've heard, as you've communicated to us, you want to expand, you're interested, and correct me if I'm wrong, about international perceptions. So just to kind of clarify that point, we cannot reach an added substantive settlement on a new agreement for expansion. That's going to be extremely complex, but we want to have a negotiation on that topic.
So I think if I could just summarize sort of what Jacob is saying is that in terms of the joint public statement, that's something we definitely want to do based on the terms we agreed on before in terms of what we want to highlight, like risk and trust. And I think to that end, in terms of the language, we sort of agreed that we would discuss what language should be used, maybe bring in some third-party evaluation of the risk. But I think the idea, what we have of the joint public statement, is to sort of reflect on status quo and look into the future, but based on third-party evaluation. The prospect of collaborating with Rocky on future on mines and other sources, that's great. I think it's very promising. But for us to include it in the joint public statement may be premature, both from our point of view and Rocky's point of view. So just to give ourselves more time, to reflect on what's been discussed so far, and to prepare, I think, adequately for that sort of a discussion, we're proposing having a second sort of, not second, it would be sixth, but from my point of view, a second, because I see this as a fresh start sort of, but having basically another mediation session. So that's what Jacob is, I think, trying to say.
Yeah, so we'd settle this issue, new negotiation on expansion to the extractive portion of the industry.
From what I understand, what you're proposing is that $12 million gap, which still remains because they've agreed to pay $160 million and then give you a $10 million worth of discount on the premium. They're suggesting that that may be bridged by providing insurance coverage for the source mines. If I may just make a suggestion, it's also possible that this insurance coverage might cost you less than your current insurance coverage does. In which case, I mean, if you discuss that at your future negotiations, I mean, that could also bridge the $12 million gap, unless you have any other ideas or solutions.
Yes, Dev. On that note, I do have some questions regarding some time frame limitations that I'm seeing. It seems that you can commit to this expansion as of now, and it would be a possible future idea. So I would like to listen more on that. But even before that, as per Judy's summarizing, I think it's important if we already put on the board, as I had suggested previously,
certainly.
some things we have already agreed upon so that we keep our minds straight on what is still missing.
Sure.
What is that, as you put it, Jacob, that just little piece missing for us? Now, Dev, if you could put it up, it seems that we have agreed on the joint statement. Highlighting risks and trust. We're still not quite sure on the language. Perhaps we can call, as you mentioned, third parties to do evaluation. We're confident that our risk will be proved to be very good at the moment. And then we can also work on some marketing strategies with both of our teams and see where we can frame this in the best way possible for both companies. For
Yes.
Fonderay as an expansion, and for Rocky as a demonstration that it's a diligent and a risk manageable company.
I'll quickly jump in here. Thank you so much. On that point, just to underline the word contingency based on the actuarial analysis, that was an important component.
I think, yeah, because just from, I think it's in our common interest to sort of have an accurate reflection. So if it turns out, I mean, we would be more than happy to to present that, you know, Rocky's interest or Rocky's risk is at an optimal level. So I think the interest over here is just sort of accurate reflection, which is why Jacob is suggesting having it contingency based. But it's not because we're hesitant to sort of make this statement.
I understand. It seems that it's important for Fonderay to have concrete information regarding the risks to show that also you're a reliable insurance company which goes after the certain risks.
Yes, to clarify, the statement will be made, it'll be public and written. The element that is contingent is whether we will make an actuarial evaluation that that we expect the quality to be good now and continuing, or whether it'll just be we expect it in the future. Okay.
Perhaps, and one thing was missing, but I think we all have this in mind as well, is that the joint public statement would also have a written version. This is very important for our possible...
It's written that it's written.
I'm sorry, I can't see it from here. Thank you.
It's probably my terrible handwriting.
Thank you, Dev, for displaying your handwriting. Jacob, I'd like to explore a little into more detail this proposal of a discount. Now, you mentioned this would happen over the span of 10 years. What is your limitation regarding reducing this span of time?
Yeah, so I guess, yes, so time's of the essence for you, as you've communicated. We can, play with the algebra and make it, 5 years of 2 million. I will underline and make it clear that 10 million expansion is the most of what we can do, quite honestly. But we can, if 10 and 1 isn't ideal, we can go 5 and 2. And just to, well, it's something that we want to do anyways, but then just to show our kind of intentions with this and to build that trust that we wanted to improve from the beginning. Although our intentions were good in that issue that we highlighted in the beginning of the negotiation, we do acknowledge that that's a problem in the industry. Insurance companies do not exist in a vacuum. We're quite directly linked to the companies and the world around us. So at the next roadshow, just as a confidence building measure for you, we want to present to the international kind of insurance world on the topic that we have to change the language. The numbers are going to be the same, but our language, our discourse has an impact. So we're going to do that on our end to try and change the industry that way. So as a safeguard, as you mentioned, safeguards going forward for other actors too. We don't want this to be repeated, not for us, but not for these other insurance relationships in the world. So we want to do that as well.
Well, so from what I understand, in this new roadshow, you would remove this colorful language, try to reframe this, the numbers would still be the same. I think something useful for us to consider is that, on our view, the numbers are not the same. It's been a year and 4 months of our dispute. We have been always diligently managing risks. So perhaps even before conveying any information, it would be good to have inspections at our site to understand better what we're facing.
Yes, let me clarify, and thank you for that. So basically, it isn't us redoing our presentation, it's us telling the community that our industry needs to change. So it's a normative statement, it's a normative plea to the industry to change our language.
So I think what Jacob was saying with respect to the numbers was that it sort of impress upon other insurance players that numbers will always be there, numbers will always be numbers, but how we present those numbers and what language we use, not just specific to our relationship, but any insurance relationship, really matters. So it was just more of a normative market precedent sort of solution we were proposing.
I do appreciate your willingness to be more, let we say, fair on your companies you insure. I think that's a commendable commitment you're taking. Now, Jacob, you had mentioned that you would be able to reduce the time frame of the discount for 5 years. Now, I just want to make sure, is that the lowest you can go?
We can go lower. We see it as more of a kind of industry standard if our premium value has some element of longevity, so it really is a standard. We could go lower and then adjust accordingly to make the maximum 10 million no matter the outcome. We would encourage you to maybe not go below 5 and 2, but if we need to, yeah, we can.
I was asking this question. I'm sorry.
No, I just wanted to check in how much time we have left.
We have about 3 minutes left, so
Okay,
if you
so
could just
maybe-
quickly respond.
Yes. Thank you for noting that. I was just asking this question, Jacob, because as I mentioned before, we are interested into receiving the payments in a reasonable time frame. So I think in principle we can agree to a time frame of 5 years, 2 million per year. This would amount to a total of 170 million of payments, with the assurance that we will start negotiations for expanding the coverage of insurance of our operation. We also have made progress, I would say substantive progress, regarding the public statement, so the non-monetary form of compensation for the reputational damages that were caused. And I do think that this matter of reputation is also linked to the discounts in the premiums, because they have a direct relation. Is there
Thank
anything
you.
you'd like to add, Bernardo?
And I think it seems that we have agreed on a lot of issues regarding the joint statement, regarding future possibilities and negotiations, regarding the 170 million being 160 up front and the other 10 million being 5 to 2, as we had discussed. So, Antonio, perhaps you could enlighten us on what do you think it's the next.
I'm afraid we're really running out of time, and I think you've done a remarkable job of summarizing what we agreed at, so I'm not going to do it all over again. All I want to say before we conclude this session, because we have about 2 minutes left, so unless there's something very pressing you want to bring up.
I just wanted to make just a quick kind of closing remark. Taking the big picture of where we started across this negotiation. So in the first negotiation, unbreachable numbers. The second negotiation, numbers still unbreachable, but maybe we can get along. Third negotiation, starting to narrow things. And the previous negotiation, getting some big surprises, but we're still here, and now we're at a settlement. I wanted to just acknowledge how far we've gotten to, and really thank you guys for your candor and honesty and resilience in this negotiation. And I'm happy that we appear to be reaching a settlement. So thank you so much.
So what we can do is we can draw up a memorandum of understanding, and I'll put all those things that I've mentioned there on the memorandum. For instance, the joint public statement, the 160 million plus the 10 million premium discount over 5 years of 2 million each, and the fact that you're going to soon start negotiations on source mining coverage.
I think that's a great idea, Dev, and I would
Yeah.
even suggest, Jacob, that we shake hands on this future negotiations, I think, to really strike while the iron is hot.
Definitely.
Of course.
And I congratulate both of you because when I found out about the roadshow, I was genuinely afraid this would be a bloodbath. But yes. Congratulations.
So, well, first of all, I'd like to say congratulations to all of you. Great job, an exciting session. We are going to take a break of 10 minutes. The judges are leaving the room, so they are going to deliberate and do the scoring. I would kindly ask you to remain in the room because they are coming back after the break, because we are still streaming live the session, and we will hear their feedback once they come in. Well, I think we had such a great demonstration of this handshake. It was very emotional, at least for me. So please, let's hear Olivier.
Thank you, Amanda. Thank you, Amanda. I almost lost my voice, as you can see. So I also want to congratulate the finalists of this great competition. Great job. Bravo. And for those of you who don't know me because you are watching on the internet, I am Olivier André, Vice President, International and Dispute Resolution Services at CPR, with no voice. For those of you in the room, I would like to remind you that we will be having the award ceremony at Hello Baptista across the street, and you're all invited at 7 p.m. There's something else I wanted to say. Oh, and of course, I'd like to remind everyone that on Monday, April the 23rd, CPR will be holding its 6th Brazil Dispute Management Congress, hosted by Mackenzie University in São Paulo. If you have not yet registered, please do so. It's really bad. By the end of today, I think was the deadline, visit our website, go to upcoming events, you will see the event listed. There is a great program that we've put together with many great dispute resolution professionals from all around the world. And we will be discussing business dispute management, including, of course, mediation. So please sign up and join us. It will be a great program, and we will be having great conversations on Monday. So with that, I will ask you to please be patient, remain in the room so that we can resume very promptly in now about 5 minutes. And the judges will be giving some brief feedback to the teams that have performed in the final. And then we will all go and celebrate it. And I think drinks will do a lot of good to my throats. So thank you. I take this opportunity actually to thank everybody who participated in this 2018 CPR International Mediation Competition. All the teams, all the students, law students and students of all fields from many parts of the world. Great job. You all did a fabulous job. You prepared for many months with the help of your coaches, whom I also thank very much for training your students to participate in this competition. This is a great thing that we're doing here, training the future generation of lawyers and business leaders and making them more familiar to the mediation process as a great way to resolve what seems to be unresolvable disputes. Talking about the disputes, I want to thank Diego Falek, who is in the room back there. Thank you very much. And his team, who have done, oh, it goes much better, who have done a fabulous job at creating the problem and the different confidential information that we've dealt with over the course of the past 2 days, and that created a very interesting setup for the students to work with. I want to mention that the students only had 1 hour before each round to prepare for the round with the confidential information. So that was quite challenging, and that demonstrated basically their great adaptability and flexibility. So I want to thank again Diego Falek and his team for putting this program together. All the judges who participated, of course, in the course of the past 2 days in judging and sharing their professional expertise and skills with the students. Many of them came from also different parts of the world, and I want to thank them for that. This competition is getting really international, and this is fantastic. Next year, let's take it to the next level and make it even more international. So go back to your country, and from wherever you're watching, put a team together and send those teams to São Paulo. It's a great city. I want, of course, to thank all of the organizing committee and the volunteers who helped us throughout the day. Felipe, who is over there, wave Felipe so that we can see you. Lilian, who is probably slaving away somewhere else on another task. Lilian Marquez. Gustavo Luis Marquez, who had to leave us and go back to Rio for work. And of course, the one that everybody has asked me, where is he? Throughout the 2 days of the competition, Chris Silva, with whom everyone has. Thank you. With whom everybody has dealt, really, and who has done an incredible amount of work putting this together from A to Z over the past few months, and we will continue working on, scanning the score sheets and doing all kind of work that we need to do in the background. And of course, last but not least, I would like to thank, and of course, before I do that, I'd like to thank the co-chairs, Amanda Federico Lopez, and also the other co-chair, Juliana de Nebro of Organ Lovers, who was not able to join us today, but who has been working in the background for the past few months. Doing an incredible amount of work. And last but not least, I would like to thank FIESP, Leonora Age, the Deputy Secretary General, as well as all of her team that have been putting an incredible amount of work over the past 2 days. They're standing over there, and they've been everywhere. So please give them a round of applause, please. Thank them. And how much more time do we have? I can keep talking, but we're almost at 4 minutes. Do you think I can keep talking? I will just give you a break because my voice must be really unpleasant at this point. So we'll take a 4-minute kind of talk to your neighbor, introduce yourself, and we will be having drinks and getting to know and finally relax in a few minutes. So let's be patient. Thank you.
Well, so we are back. And most importantly, the judges are back. Well, so now we are going to have a brief feedback session. And, well, enjoy.
Okay, I think I have here. Okay, Fernanda from São Paulo. Oh, you did a great job, you see. All of you. All I have to say is to congratulate you all. I know how difficult it is. It's not easy to do such a wonderful thing that you have done here. And you are so young, And it's really wonderful for us as mediators see that we have hope in the future. And it's not the future because it's the present. You're here. And so it was really difficult for us to judge. It was really difficult to find, considerations about improvements. But we have only for now we have only good words for you. the lawyers, it's really difficult to change the mindset as a lawyer and to do the job at the mediation process. And you were great. You were trying to you gave space to your client to negotiate, to talk, and always he wanted you were there to say, okay, to resume, to point, to say the right words to him. And you were always trying to point the legal issues, and it was really important to point out all the legal issues, but considering the commercial issues as well. And you both, Jakob, you were, at the beginning, at the opening statement, you just said, we have an elephant here in the room. And it was really important. You brought a difficult issue in a soft way, but you brought it. So, and during the negotiations, you were, sometimes you were thinking about, you were so natural dealing with impasses and sharing your concernings about the other stakeholders. So it was really great. And you, just at the beginning, you said, okay, this is my mission. You were very clear what you wanted. And you wanted to resolve the case in the best way. You were new at the company, and you had to go back home and bring good news. So, and you did it. So congratulations. And one word to the mediator. Your mother must be very proud of you.
Okay. I'll try to come up with some other ideas, and I'm going to give a little bit more feedback to the mediator just because you have an audience too. So a couple of things I think we can all learn from that is great style. Doesn't she make us feel comfortable? You know why she's here. We know she has great skills. One thing I'd like to point out is that this privileged place that we as mediators get is when we get some confidential information from both sides. And as observers, we knew that you were going to make some deal on premiums, and you wanted that. And Dev, you have to be a poker player sometimes when you get this. So her response was she knew this, and her eyes kind of lit up a little bit, but she was the poker player, that she had this information and she couldn't share it. And so challenging thing to do. The only thing you missed is when they started talking about negotiating the next thing, mediator in business might say, and I'd really like to be hired to negotiate, to be your mediator in that next negotiation. That's a joke. You didn't miss anything. Congratulations. So I'll start on this side. I liked the opening. You came out with this conciliatory tone about the PowerPoint and all that, and I appreciated that. When you said, let's name it, I liked that idea at the beginning. We often forget that even saying something like that and naming it the elephant in the room or whatever it is has quite a lot of value to a session. You guys work really well together. We appreciated that. Your willingness to be open and share information was quite impressive. In terms of using the mediator, I think you excelled at that you had a couple of opportunities. You actually, I think it was Jacob, not you, he said, how do you think we're doing? I expected this to be a little bit more combative. How do you think we are doing? Can you give us any feedback on how we're handling that? Excellent idea. I enjoyed that. And then when she helped you plan the strategy going forward, you were willing to take her advice and suggestions. For this side, we expected a different Antonio in this round. We thought you were going to be, and you thought it was going to be a bit more combative, and I couldn't figure out how this nice guy was going to be this combative guy. But you guys really took the case to the. I saw them in the previous round and played this quite well. You work so well together. Perhaps a great example for all of us on how to work as a team. And I told them before, yeah, here they are holding hands. I think they're like brothers. They're like brothers. And it's a great role model for all of us. In whatever, even the three of us, how we work together. I think I come here to judge, but I really come here to learn. And I learned something from all three groups of participants here. And thank you for the privilege of showing me lots of things and teaching me a lot.
Thanks. My name is Damien from Canada, and just so you know, before we walked in here, Olivier told us, you know, it's like the Oscars. If you talk too long, the music's going to start. So I'm going to try to be brief and deviate from what I normally do. What I want to just note, and I think you will all agree, it was masterfully done today on all counts. And this is why we decided to stress the positive. Because frankly, we would have been out there for another half hour if we had to look for anything more. I'll do quickly 5 things. I want to illustrate and pick on 5 demonstration of almost a perfect performance on a particular item. I'm going to start to my left. On the notion of being a character and having confidence in demonstrating that, Antonio, you did that wonderfully. I'll tell you how. You gave straight up answers to very difficult questions. That takes confidence. You had, on your own, courageous questions. That takes confidence. You reminded of the litigation on your last offer. That takes confidence. And you calculated numbers in a sophisticated way on the fly. And it appeared very confident. So well done. Not everyone can pull that off the way you did. I applaud you for that. It was very well done. Thank you, David. Bernardo, you illustrated the idea of supporting the client extremely well, and it came out wonderfully and incredibly when you came to the defense of your client, and in fact, you drew from previous cases and information you had when you spoke of the lowered operational levels. You may remember that moment. That was the perfect thing to say at the perfect moment in supporting your client. It was done by the book and perfectly done. So you illustrated that well for everyone here. Well done. Over here, Jacob. Jacob, I think you mastered selling. You sold the public statement, you sold the premium discount, and at the end, the insurance product for mining. And when I say that you did that incredibly well, is that you did it from their perspective first. Every time you introduced one of these ideas, you told them why it was good for their interests, and then you spoke about why it was good for your interests. You know I'm a fan of that, and you did it well, and you did it beautifully. Well done. Julie, deflecting. The moral damages was not language that you could tolerate in this round. You knew that. So what you did to deflect is that you framed it in the context of impacts on the market. It came out early in the round. It was artfully done in terms of just deviating, moving away from contentious language that you could not have, and framing it in a way that could resonate well with them. It was done by the book, very beautifully done. Well done. Last but not least, the mediator. Use of humor. I have 2 things for you. And I'm going to quote things that the audience heard. Talk to me now. It's almost a playback on what we've all heard. It's written that it is written. This is a long journey for me during the caucus to walk all the way to the door. These are your quotes. Your mom will be proud. But on a more serious way, you also did so on critical things. Is there anything more that I should know during the caucus? Point blank, to the point. And there's an alignment of interests in the open forum. You said that. That's very encouraging. Well then, it was a privilege to watch this. I think we can agree. I hope the audience can also agree. Best of luck.
Okay, so now our final session is officially over. Now we can relax, and just across the street, you're going to have a cocktail. We'll have a reception at Eliel Baptista. You're all welcome. So please, just go. Yeah, just leave right now.
We've taken enough time already.
Yeah.